Good morning, you guys. It's Noelle with Baker's Backyard Bounty. Thank you for being here this morning. Today we're going to be talking about onions. So we ordered our onions from Dixondale Farms. This is their little catalog for this year. We've had really good success with them. Last year we ordered yellow, white, and red, and actually planted, I don't know if I'd say too many, but maybe a little too much. So we've been keeping them in our outside fridge in the garage to keep them cool and stored, and it's been working really well. But we've kind of hit a turning point where some of them are starting to sprout, and then actually some of our yellow ones at the base are starting to show a little bit of mold. And so SOS, we don't want to waste these onions, so we decided we need to preserve them. We've been eating off of these since, Reed, when did we harvest them? Do you remember? June probably. We've planted them out, I would say end of February, beginning of March. So they've stayed well for us for several months now, but yeah, it's time to do something with them to prevent them from running. So what we're gonna do today is actually pickle some red onions and then dehydrate the rest. The yellow and white, I'm gonna go ahead and put them in my dehydrator, and I thought I would bring you along. So when we're talking about food preservation, this is something that as I'm learning to preserve food, I'm realizing that we waste so much just because we don't know what to do with it, or we run out of time, or we get busy. Before we went on vacation, actually, I looked at our fridge and I was like, oh my gosh, these mushrooms are gonna go to waste, these onions are gonna go to waste. And so I dehydrated everything before our trip, and the okra, and it really made me feel like this new perspective and appreciation. Like with these onions, we grew them, we put time, energy, love into them. So obviously we don't want to waste them because it was a lot of like our resources that we poured into them. If you're going to the grocery store, onions are super cheap. It's easy to just pick one up, let it go bad and say, well, throw it away, right? It was cheap anyways. But when you have a connection to your food, you don't really want to do that. Also, in this book that Reed has been reading, he talked to me about it today. It's actually, here you go, Saving Us, a climate scientist's case for hope and healing in a divided world. So he said he actually feels hopeful about it, which is something new. Typically what we read is pretty doomsday. But they talk about how almost a third of the food grown on the planet goes to waste. A third. That means water, that means pesticides, that means labor, that means land, like all of it is just being wasted. And food preservation helps to combat that because we're able to use it in more unique and diverse ways and not just throw it away because we don't know what else to do. This book, I want to just read you this. If food waste were its own country, it would be the third biggest emitter annually today after China and the US. So food waste contributes a lot. I think it's like 8% to the CO2 emitted globally each year. So if we can cut down food waste, that's always a plus. And just by dehydrating my onions, maybe I'm making a small step towards saving the planet. Every little bit counts, right? So with onions, if you're considering growing them, they're a great backyard crop. We use pretty much, I would say, an onion almost a day. In everything we cook, we use onion. And so it's a great staple for us to have and easy to grow in the backyard. So if you'd like to check out Dixondale Farms, they really have great resources on what kinds of onions to grow for your zone, your region. There's short day varieties, intermediate day varieties, and long day varieties. So we grow mainly short day varieties here, like Texas Legends, and their super sweet onion. So anyways, not all onions are created equal, so make sure you check out which onions are appropriate for your zone. But Dixondale has great resources online to help guide you through that. So this is the bin of yellow onions that I'm gonna be dehydrating today. And then here I just have a mix of some of our reds that were sprouting. What's this bad boy? Yeah. And then some of our whites. The whites are actually holding up fairly well. There was a couple of them that started sprouting. So I'm gonna either pickle the white, I can't decide if I'm gonna throw those in with the reds, or dehydrate. So what I'm gonna be using today is an Excalibur dehydrator. So this is a little bit of an investment, but we have used it for spice mixes, drying out herbs for tea, sun-dried tomatoes. I'm trying to think, I made fruit leather in here. So we're still trying to monopolize all the resources that this thing can make, but today that's where I'm gonna be dehydrating our onions. So to prepare the onions for dehydrating, obviously you're gonna cut off the ends and then peel the outer skin off. Then what we're gonna do is cut them in half and then quarters and then into slices. I'm not going to chop my onions finely just because they shrink up so much when they're dehydrated. So we're gonna do more like slices or slivers. Let's see. They are going to cook for on average about 8 hours at 125, and they're gonna smell. So just like don't do this before you have an open house or something like that. Bake cookies instead. But it's gonna probably fill up our house with a nice yummy onion smell, which I actually don't mind. I like the smell of onions. What else? Other things. Oh, when you want to use them, you just rehydrate them with some hot water and then pop them into the dish that you'd like to use. So for soups, actually, you can just sprinkle them right in because the broth will rehydrate them in the pot. So really easy. You can also make onion powder, onion flakes by pulsing the dried onions in a food processor. So we'll see if we have enough to do some of that, play around with that, but let's get going. So one of the great resources that I got this at my local library is the Beginner's Guide to Dehydrating Food. It goes by vegetable or name or fruit, so it goes in alphabetical order, so they have a whole onions page. So if you feel uninspired or stuck with like, how do I even use my dehydrator, I have found a lot of inspiration in these kind of manuals. So it's actually pretty cool here today. I'm gonna grab some jalapenos for my pickled red onions. They are called spicy and sweet pickled red onions. Reed is so good at spotting the crops when they're green. I don't have that. Here we go. There she blows. I think I'm just gonna take 2 of them. These are pretty good size. Awesome. Morning, girls. Good morning. Okay, bye. I have the best sous chef around. Thank you. So this is about the thickness that you like your onions, since again, they do shrink up a lot in the dehydrator. I'm just gonna slide this in. Voila, one done. Woo! I smell it already. Okay, if you don't have a basket, this will do. All right, tray numero dos. This is gonna fill up very quickly, and we're probably gonna have to do quite a few batches. All right, so while he is chopping the yellow onions for dehydrating, I'm gonna get started on pickling our red onions. Pickled onions, so our family is a little bit new to fermented foods. It's something that's great for your gut health, but part of our American diet doesn't include a lot of fermented foods. Kimchi, sauerkraut, even like sourdough. These are things that are on the rise, but our palates are still adjusting. Pickled red onions are a pretty like safe starter because again, you can put them in salads, tacos. We make a lot of fajitas, quesadillas. And so again, this is like a sweet and spicy red onion pickle recipe. So what I'm gonna be using today is red wine vinegar, some sugar, some pickling salt, which you can get in the canning section at your local grocery store, some jalapenos, and of course, red onions. I'm just reusing an old pickle jar that we had because I'm not canning these for like preservation in the pantry. I'm just gonna have a jar of them on hand in the fridge. We aren't really sure how many pickled red onions we're gonna go through, so just to be safe, I don't wanna waste anything. I'm gonna dehydrate most of the onions because that's kind of a safe bet. They're pretty versatile, so I'm just making one jar today. So this recipe comes from this book. It's by America's Test Kitchen, which they're very thorough and precise in all the things that they do. But this is called Foolproof Preserving, and that's where my pickled red onion recipe is gonna be coming from today. So whenever you are pickling something, there's like this basic recipe for a brine. Typically it involves a vinegar, water, sugar, salt, and then you can add in spices like celery seed, peppercorns, things like that, dill. So with the brine, I just use this simple saucepan. I'm gonna add in all those ingredients. And then with my chopped red onions, I'm gonna fill up this jar with the red onions and simply pour that hot brine over the onions. Let it cool on the counter for about an hour and then pop it in the fridge. This applies to quick pickles. You can pickle like dilly green beans. But yeah, you have to make the brine first, and it's a hot liquid. Dehydrator is filled up, so we just pop the lid on. Set it for 125, and then the timer, we'll go ahead and do it for 6 hours to start, and then I can check them. Voila. All right, so I just simmered that concoction on the stove like on a medium low, and really you just want it to simmer until the sugar is dissolved, so it doesn't take really long at all. Here's my chopped red onions in my clean, sterile jar. Put it through the dishwasher. Pour it in with the jalapenos, the red wine vinegar. And if it doesn't fill it up all the way to the top, just make another batch, or just pour vinegar until it covers all of the onions. So fill the rest of the way with vinegar, and then you should be good to go. I'm gonna let this cool and then put it in the fridge. I don't know that these last a really long time in the fridge, but over the next week or so, we're gonna dive into these and see what we think, and see how many more we need to process in order to make it through the season. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. May you find the bounty in your own life, all the beauty that it holds, and find something in your fridge or pantry to preserve today. Just give it a try. That'll be your homework, and we'll see you soon.